a.m. at the Whitney Museum. I'm not going to be performing with anybody else, but if I were, it would be Matt Lebo. I made these bells. No, I didn't. Sarah Willis made them. In my pottery class for singles on Saturday night. No. We didn't get married, we didn't have children, or we did, but we left or were left. There's another one on Friday nights, another pottery class. You go to another town in a car and down into the basement with the elder women. They work on the pottery down there underground, under the house, in the basement. There are bright lights down there and a box with stories in, and you can hear them in the basement in the Friday night pottery class. They have stories down there about a time in the mind when women and men who are younger and behaving badly in this other land, ignoring the rules and stealing from each other, getting angry and violent and aroused outside the marriage ties, punching and fighting in a swimming pool. These are secret stories, not meant for the very young to hear. The elder women shouldn't be telling and knowing them either, but something is wrong, something is changing. They are missing something and they can't remember what. When everything changes so quickly, these new stories appear in the mind. They have these stories and they are secret, and it's an expression of something that's wrong, that they can't keep up with, and it festers underneath the skin on top of the soil. The soil is not healthy because the mind is not healthy. The mind is not healthy because the soil is not healthy. The children overhear the stories, they grow up, they live the stories, they refer to them. Everything they tell and write is about pottery and ceramics. It's all very, very personal. I'd have to dig up my notes. One by one, the elder women have died, but they stay near the land where their houses were built. Their sons die young, and the wives of their sons push them out of the house, out of the land where their houses were built. The wives of their sons stay in the house and put on all the dresses of the elder women all at once. And they walk around the house like that, cooking up all the food and watching up all the shows. You can go in there and drink coffee and see it for yourself. You can't say anything to them because they'll tell you it has to be this way. The elder women are pushed out of the house. They are still living somewhere, but eventually, once they are pushed out of their homes, they leave their bodies. Their bodies are breathing, but the women live out in the woods behind the house. When it's time for them to die, the preparation takes a long time. They have to scrape the skin of dead leaves from the ground. They have to dig down into the soil under there, and there are very thin roots in that soil. They have to tear those roots a little in order to keep digging. And when they tear at them, the same thing happens to their veins and arteries, getting also a little torn, and also to their nerves, because they look so much like the roots themselves and carry information and nourishment in the same ways to the different bodies. Bodies of different types, but which are made in the same way. Trees, plants, animals, and rocks, also humans, such as these elder women who are digging holes in the woods behind the houses where the wives of their dead sons are having a dinner party with 17 coats of 9 different shades of nail polish on. Their sons can come and watch the elder women in the woods behind the house, and if the mother asks him for help, he will help them, but they forget to ask. They forget that he is there. Once the hole is dug, the elder women bury themselves in the soil in the woods behind the house. Once they are buried, the new husband of the wives can dump other leaves over them, the ones that have fallen in this coming year. The next year, the new husbands dump more leaves and some burnt plastic over the bodies of the women, and the leaves rot and the elder women's teeth rot, but they are still breathing. The burnt plastic cannot rot. Someone should make a cake out of this plastic. Maybe a robot could eat it. Are there a robot birthday coming up? The first husbands, the sons of the elder women, are there watching them from the trees. The trees are watching the women too. The new husbands who are dumping back there feel that something is watching them. One man falls against one of the trees. He trips on one of the larger roots and falls against one of the trees. The tree catches him. He has long hair, and the tree has woody fingers after the leaves have fallen, and it can stroke his hair. The man listens to what the tree tells him. He looks up at the tree twig fingers that are stroking his hair and see that although it is almost winter, the tips of the branch already contain the buds of next year's spring blossoms. It begins to rain. Then it is raining very hard. The man is soaking wet. He goes inside and talks to his new wife. She's in the middle of putting on every fur coat in the house that she can find, and stuffing the pockets with all the shoes, and putting on all the necklaces out of every jewelry box. He tells her what the tree told him, which was a secret about her and the way she came to have this house. Before she has time to get scared or angry, he takes her hand in both of his hands. He takes her down into the basement. She has never been down there because of the dust. She sees the pottery. She cries. Outside there are some squirrels. These squirrels are young and small. They hear her crying. They don't know the whole story, but they don't need to know. They know how to build a nest and how to cross a road on the telephone wire high above it. There are small windows at the very top of the basement room for ventilation. The small squirrels pretend that they are doing something else near the ventilation window and eavesdrop and peeping on the man and the woman talking in the basement. These squirrels are small because they were just born the previous winter. They are not even a year old, but already they know how to build their own nest and what to do about acorns. The woman is crying, and they can hear and see her out of one eye if they stay near the window and pretend to be concerned about more acorns. The new husband, he is comforting her and helping her to face the truth. The two people met in a singles bar. It was the 1980s. It was a bar for anybody, but a lot of local singles would meet there, and some people who were married but wished they were single. It was called the phone booth, F-O-N-E. Each table had a telephone and a big lit-up number, and you could call the different tables. He called her table, and she said that she was a widow, which was a truth. He was almost completely divorced from another wife, which was less of a truth. The truth was that he was separated from her, except that he was still living with her. Everybody wants children, but they don't know who to ask. Everybody wants a big Victorian farmhouse, but they aren't building them like that anymore, and people are afraid to ask if they can have one. One night, a few years later, the elder women stop breathing, and they leave their bodies, which are already buried in graves of their own making behind the house. Graves that there was no one to dig for them, so they had to dig them for themselves. When these women finally die, it is winter. They leave their bodies there, but they depart and go back to their house. There is another family living there now. Nobody knows what happened to the wife of the woman's son. The women, when they arise from their bodies, don't see their sons in the trees at first, but from the roof of the house, they see them over there in the woods behind the house. They see each other, and the sons see their mothers over by the house, up on the second floor, trying to see into the windows. They are so happy to see her, they just want to hug her, their mother. They move from the trees, and the mothers move from the second floor windows of their old house, but spirits and ancestor guides, thank you for restoring to me the strength to tell this story. Women who came before me and cleared the way. They don't have bodies anymore, and so they cannot embrace each other. No, only when we have bodies can we embrace each other. Only during the time when we are given bodies can one person reach out and stroke another's cheek. Only during that time, when there also happen to be so many other needs and worries which can easily get in the way when you let them. The more you can visit with the memory of not having a body, the more you will be able to appreciate having one and being on the earth and letting the trees stroke your hair with their bare branches in the late autumn. Okay, you understand. You can sit by the fire and it will warm you. When you are disembodied and floating up among the whir of the ceiling fan, that won't be possible. Hug your mother while you still can. Don't worry too much about how expensive things are in this country. Learn how to make fire without matches and you will be free. Fire is the sunlight that is held within the wood of the plants as they grow over the years. If you know what you're doing, you can convince the wood of the tree to release the warmth and light from the sun it contains in its body to you. And you have to do that by making a personal contact and conversation with it, and by working with it, like in a marriage. Down in the ceramics basement, there were no pottery wheels. Everything was liquid clay being poured into a mold and dried. Then when it's dry, you take the mold halves away, and one of your first jobs is to scrape and sand away the crease from where the two halves of the mold sat together. I think rubber bands hold them together, big, thick rubber bands that you have to order specially, over the phone or mail order. Then you have to make a choice, glaze or stain. If you choose stain, you fire the piece in the kiln right away to make what is called a bisque out of the piece. Then you choose your stains, and there are a lot of options, a lot more options than with glaze, and you know right away how it's going to look. They're really paints. With glaze, you glaze it right away, and it's not always easy to know how it's going to come out unless you've been really good about making test tiles, and even then. Plus, who has the patience? Because then you fire it, and that's when the color comes out, and the colors are generally more muted. With stains, you can get a gold metallic or silver metallic for the bell the little figurine boy is holding and ringing, for instance. But say if the boy is on a teapot, you'll want to do a glaze instead, because you can't eat or drink out of a ceramic anything unless it's glazed. Stain paints are poisonous, and especially the spray you have to put on them to set them. Between you and me, glazed pieces are generally considered to be more classy than stained pieces. Stained pieces are more for the sake of doing it. I gave a few stained pieces as gifts, and let's just say they weren't very much appreciated. But for me, at that time, the stains were all I wanted to do. I wanted to work with all the colors and for everything to be ready as soon as I was done painting and spraying it. My mother did the glazes mostly. We argued when I was painting the Christmas village. That's the term to use when we're staining. When glazing, we say that we are glazing. We argued because I was doing the figurines of the village townsfolk, and I was painting the mouths of the choir people, and I was painting them black. They're open mouths. It's a hole, the mouth. And when it's open, you mostly can't see much inside if you are standing far away. So I didn't think that they should be red. But she was saying I should paint them white, and I just got very frustrated. She was pushing me in the wrong direction, and I knew I didn't want to paint their mouths white. Why would you paint the mouths of a village townsfolk Christmas caroler white, unless they were foaming at the mouth? It was so crazy that she was saying that and being so insistent. I started to get very frustrated. I'm trying to do what I want and believe with my life. It's not always easy, and I almost never feel understood by any other people. Nobody ever understood me, not then and not now, and my powers of communication are kind of powerless. A couple of years later, when it came time for me to start menstruating, that feeling of frustration would grow and grow. The son who died was Tony. He lived at home with his mother, who was the ceramics teacher and a very large and interesting woman. Her name was Flo. She was opinionated, but also very knowledgeable, especially about the ready-made ceramics industry. She ran a whole thing down in her basement. They were classes, and we all made our pieces for various reasons. We paid for the classes, my mother paid for me, and we also paid for each piece we wanted to make. All the tools we needed were there, in the middle of the big table in small plastic bins, and everyone had plenty of room because the table was big enough. Different sponges and scrapers and sanders and brushes were needed at various intervals. It was crowded down in there, but organized. There were a lot of possibilities to choose from. We would enter through a door directly into the basement from a parking lot on the backyard. We didn't have to enter the house at all. Tony had an aneurysm. He was 28 or 29 years old. It happened in an instant and he was gone. It was very hard for me to grasp. He was very handsome with dark hair and a mustache and a leather jacket, and still lived at home and had a wife who was very pretty and also lived there. Her name was like Gina, maybe. Nothing was ever the same after Tony died. Flo was devastated. We went to visit her not long after. We went into the house that time. We didn't even go into the basement, which was strange and disappointing to me, but I realize now it was the only time I ever saw inside the house upstairs. She cried and cried, digging her capable thumb and forefinger into the corners of her eyes as the tears spilled out in big drops and splashed all over her big forearm and the kitchen table and the newspapers that were all over the table. I don't think we saw Gina that evening. I kept thinking about how devastated she must be to lose her handsome husband like that all of a sudden. I did want to see what that would actually look like on a woman that pretty. I loved when my mother would take me places at night after dark. I remember visiting different people that we knew, driving over the dark roads to the places where we found them living. I would lie in the back seat and watch the moon and the continuous flip-book motion, bump and droop of the power lines running along the side of the road. Once in a while I'd catch sight of a night squirrel running along them too. Was that real though? Do bats do that? We went to parties and I would get put into my pajamas about halfway through, grazing in the wooden bowls and put to bed among piles of hippie coats and woven shawls. Once we walked through the snowfall along a wooden fence that had candles set in the 2 or 3 inch drips along the top of it, lighting our way to the trailer-looking dwelling filled with macramees and God's eyes and aqua-painted walls, and John Tyler, the legendary, the much-celebrated, the famously eccentric science teacher leaning down and holding up 7 or 8 fingers into my face and telling me with a big mustache, "I'll have you in my class in this many years." Where he did later show the world to me and the others from his crazy, crazy classroom. He had daughters who he brought to KISS concerts and closets full of unbelievable and loopy junk to teach us the lessons of physics, biology, and chemistry. The law of inertia, for instance, was demonstrated by a filthy and terrible-looking child-sized doll named Imogene, pushed forward by one of the boys who could most not sit still, fast, until it slammed into a rubber stopper he had put on the floor and sent Imogene flying into the cinder block wall. He burned the concepts, laws, and theories into our brains by way of our channels of by then considerably peaking adolescent powers of derision. Visibly shaken, he was the one who delivered to us the news about the mid-air explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger. We all sat silent-faced, also shaken, as we knew if he had applied for the Teacher in Space program, he had refused to throw his hat in the ring, in spite of the enthusiastic beseechments of students and all, citing his duty as expander of our feeble country minds. He might have been in the place of Christa McAuliffe, sublimated, vaporized, ionized in an instantaneous enthalpic system, exothermic cataclysm. He knew it, and we knew it. Together we looked into the catastrophic face of sudden death and were drawn tight with it across our bones. I had another stranger memory of going into a dark stone building on a winter's night. The same night? A different night? Finding a seat on one of the large stone steps and partaking in a ceremony. The room was shaped like an amphitheater and was an altar at the bottom. Someone was dressed in white and they consecrated something and poured a large amount of blood into a skull and passed it around, and everyone at the ceremony drank from the skull, which was a goat's skull. But by the time the skull got to us and we drank from it, it was wine. I asked my mother whether it was blood or wine, or when did it change from blood to wine, and did the people sitting closer to the altar drink blood, or how long did it take to change to wine? And she shushed me and said something about symbolism, and said there weren't supposed to be kids at this ceremony, and to stay quiet. Then we walked outside and there were pieces of paper that people had things written on, crumpled them, and we put them on a big raft, and set the pile of crumpled papers on fire and sent the raft down the very calm and flat but swiftly moving stream into the dark night. I've asked my mother about this night 1,000 times since then, begged her to explain it to me and what we were doing there, and she denies it. She says I had an overactive imagination, which is true, but she did finally admit to the fact that something lived in our house with us, that it came to the doorway of her bedroom one night when I was at my dad's, and our dog stood up at the end of the bed and growled at it in a deep growl she'd never heard him make before, and that eventually it went away. It's true that Gina kicked Flo out of her own house after Tony died. I don't remember where she went. I think maybe she had another son and she went to live with him somewhere. But it just seemed like so much injustice all at once. Tony was her favorite son. I think the class ended. The other women from our class all died one by one. They were all older. If I stayed very quiet, they would forget that I was there and they would gossip. And we would be there on Friday nights, so Dallas would be on, and Falcon Crest after that. My mother didn't want me watching those shows, but there really wasn't much she could do about it, I guess. There was a lot of sleeping around on those shows, and shooting and stabbing and drinking and open-mouth kissing and slapping and punching. People getting really involved with each other in all kinds of exciting and racy ways. Vanity tables and liquor cabinets and balconies and swimming pools and high-rise offices and bedrooms. I couldn't wait to grow up and get in all kinds of trouble.